Good evening, and welcome to Solidarity on Tap. My name is Chris Kerr with the Ignatian Solidarity Network. And on behalf of everyone at ISN, as well as our national
and welcome to
Solidarity on Tap sponsors, as well as our Solidarity on Tap sponsors, Mary No Lay Missioners, Jesuit Volunteer Corps, and Jesuit Volunteer Corps Northwest, thank you for joining us tonight. We're so glad to have you with us. For over 15 years, the Ignatian Solidarity Network has been uniting the Ignatian family, meaning the Jesuit network, as well as all those who are inspired to work for justice through the spiritual tradition of St. Ignatius of Loyola, to build a more just world through faith-based social justice formation, education, and advocacy. If you haven't already, please check out our website, ignatiansolidarity.net, and like and follow us on social media to get the latest advocacy alerts, educational resources, and much more. Now, as many of you know, Solidarity on Tap usually takes place in cities across the country, bringing together members of the Ignatian family. But like many things, we moved virtual in late March. In fact, this is our 15th virtual Solidarity on Tap. I think we should get a set of steak knives or something like that. I'm not sure. Anyway, even though we're still gathering virtually tonight, the goal of Solidarity on Tap is the same: to invite people to enjoy fellowship, maybe with a drink in hand, and to hear powerful reflections from members of the network engaged in work for justice. And as always, in order to build and enjoy community tonight, I encourage you to utilize the comments section on Facebook or YouTube, or post to Twitter or Instagram with the hashtag ISNLive to let us know you, your school, your church, your community are represented here tonight. You can also post your comments and questions for our guest speaker this evening on either Twitter or Facebook as well. So make sure to let us know what questions you have, so that we can make sure we share them with our guests. Now, as we join together as an Ignatian family this evening, we hold in our prayers all those who have been victims of racial violence in our country, especially those whose lives have been taken, and those who are using their bodies, their words, and actions to stand for racial justice. And we also continue to pray for all people who are affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. We hope that tonight's conversation provides us the opportunity to explore the realities of life in El Salvador, the legacy of the martyrs of that region, and that our conversation can lead us toward a hope-filled future. So with this in mind, I'm excited to introduce our speaker, Francisco Mena Ugarte. Francisco was born in El Salvador in 1974. Because of the Civil War, his family had to flee El Salvador in 1982. They lived in several countries in Central America and North America, including the US and Mexico. After 13 years, and once the war had ended, his family returned to El Salvador. Francisco is the executive director of CRISPAZ, Christians for Peace in El Salvador, a faith-based organization dedicated to building bridges of solidarity between the Church of the Poor and marginalized communities in El Salvador and communities in the United States, Canada, Australia, and other countries through mutual accompaniment. He has worked at CRISPAZ since 2009. Francisco studied business at Universidad Albert Einstein in El Salvador. He has two sisters, and he and his wife, Veronica, live in San Salvador, the capital of El Salvador. Francisco, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's great to have you.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's great to be with you. Full disclosure, I'm a member of the board of directors of CRISPAZ, Christians for Peace in El Salvador, so I get to spend a lot of time with Francisco on a regular basis, but it's nice to be in a social setting. We're here at Solidarity on Tap, so cheers, Francisco. Salud.
Salud.
Nice. Well, that's quite a cerveza there. Impressive.
It is, right?
Francisco, the global community has been facing the COVID-19 pandemic for about 7 or 8 months now. One only needs to take a glimpse at the news here in the States to understand the seriousness of the situation for people in this country. I was hoping you could give us a little bit of a sense of the situation for the people of El Salvador in light of the pandemic. How has the country responded? What's kind of the current situation? What are the challenges that people are facing there, particularly those who are most vulnerable? Can you give us a little bit of an insight on what's going on?
Sure. Just real quick, you might hear some fireworks in the back. We are celebrating the feast of San Salvador. So actually, it's the feast of the Savior of El Salvador. So
Sure.
you can hear some fireworks in the back.
All part of the show, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, that's right. Well, there are many challenges. You know, the country just has very little resources to do, you know, to do something that's worth doing, I guess. One of the things that has been very difficult is now that we can go out into the streets and we can, you know, go into the supermarket or the drugstore or a hardware store, which, by the way, are the only places that are open. We see a lot of people in the streets and the traffic lights asking for money. Something that has been very common and very sad is these white flags that people are, you know, flying, and this means that they just don't have food. Obviously, if they had a job uh, previously to the pandemic, they've lost it, and now they really have issues trying to find money to feed their families. That has been just very challenging to see. This is something that I had not seen before in El Salvador, and keep in mind, El Salvador is a poor country, but this has highlighted and kind of made this worse. If this is something that is affecting people in countries as you know, as powerful as the U.S. or countries around the world that are in much better position or much better positions than El Salvador, uh, just imagine what it's doing here. The unemployment level is extremely high. The projections are that our economy will grow negatively 10%. And this is just hammering the most vulnerable people. We had a storm that really made things worse. Um, and like I was saying, you know, just yesterday, my wife and I had to go to the hardware store. It's been raining, so we had to go buy some some materials to fix some leaks. And on our way back, you know, just seeing the amount of people on the traffic lights and just on the streets in general is really concerning. It's heartbreaking, and it just shows where we are. The challenges, I think, is that we have a government that is very good on propaganda and has just contributed to politicizing this issue that we're going through. Um, like many countries, really, El Salvador is no exception in politicizing the pandemic, but that has made it very difficult. And the challenges that lie ahead are just made much bigger by this political unnecessary conversations that are happening around this. We are unfortunately in an election year, which makes things worse. Everyone's trying to take, uh, you know, trying to benefit from this, politically speaking. So that's frustrating to see politicians trying to take advantage of this, and you know, just promising things. Um, but what I take away from this the most is this image of seeing these people on the streets. You know, just yeah, this is, like I said, something I had not seen before. And I work in an organization that is at the margins. You know, we work with people on the margins. So being around people on the margins is not something new, but this is new, and it's very concerning because it isn't something that's going to get fixed in a couple of weeks or this year. This will have long-lasting effects that will make things worse in general for the most vulnerable people here in El Salvador.
Yeah, and we saw that after the recession in 2009, right? That the ripple effect for countries like El Salvador lasted much longer than it did, you know, in the United States. So, however long it takes the United States or other large countries, large economies to break out of the cycle of kind of downturn that's caused by the pandemic, in addition to the health and safety, you know, realities that will have to continue to be overcome as well. Francisco, you mentioned your work at CRISPAZ, that you work with an organization that seeks to build bridges between marginalized and vulnerable communities in El Salvador and communities in the US, Canada, Australia, and beyond. Can you tell us a little bit about the mission and history of CRISPAZ? What, how the organization start? What's its story? What work has it been doing more recently, and how has that work been impacted by the pandemic?
Sure. We were founded in 1984, so we've been here for quite some time now. We were founded by three religious persons: a Quaker from Alaska, a Carmelite priest from Texas, and a Lutheran pastor also from Texas. I normally tell people that this sounds like the beginning of a joke, but this is how CRISPAZ was founded, and it was founded in the 80s. Like I said, these three individuals gravitated to the area of Central America and were very committed to what was happening here. And as U.S. citizens, they felt that it was extremely important to take a lot of these stories and testimonies that they were uh, witnessing and hearing firsthand back to the United States and share with fellow U.S. citizens what U.S. foreign policy was doing. And really, that was the origin of CRISPAZ. We wanted to make sure that the founders of CRISPAZ and the people that came after wanted to make sure that people understood what U.S. foreign policy was uh, how it was being played out here in El Salvador. And in 1985, the first delegation, which was the first board of directors that CRISPAZ had, came, and after that, many other delegations came and followed. One of the things that I think is really remarkable that was present during the first delegations, well, most of the delegations in the 80s, was that they came down here as human shields. People understood that they were coming down here to learn from the people of El Salvador, to learn what was happening, but they were coming down here to become human shields. They would put themselves in communities where the political violence was really bad, and they allowed Salvadorans to live another day just by merely being there. The intention from the very beginning was to include a concept that's not exclusive to CRISPAZ, but it's one that we've been working with, and it's very much a concept that we call, or we can call our own, is reverse mission. Um, we wanted people to come to El Salvador not to build things, not to put up a wall. We've been very critical from the beginning. We continue to be very critical with those type of trips that come and build things. We don't need labor, and we've never needed labor. Countries in Latin America uh, don't need people to come and do labor type activities. Uh, there's so much labor lying around, and that has been lying around, that these people put their lives at risk to make it to the United States undocumented. So from the very beginning, we wanted people to come down here and return to the United States and get involved in changing the way the U.S. was looking at El Salvador. And many people went back, became part of the sanctuary movements in different communities that they lived in. They also joined some of the protests that were taking place. They joined some of the letters that were being written to Congress to change the focus of how U.S. foreign policy was affecting El Salvador. And during the 80s, that's what we did. We wanted to make sure that the work of lobbying was in solidarity with those who were being affected by the war. In 1992, the peace accords were signed, and very quickly, CRISPAZ and many other organizations realized that it was very naive to believe that a signing of a document could bring peace to a country. We did have a ceasefire, but peace was something that we did not have. Amnesty laws, or the amnesty law, was put in place very quickly after the peace accords were signed, that allowed the people that assassinated the Jesuits, the officers that assassinated the Jesuits, Monsignor Romero and many other thousands of Salvadorans to, excuse me, to just walk freely in the streets of El Salvador. That did not allow for a peace to happen in El Salvador. One of the things that was really present in our new El Salvador was this lack of justice that was not present. So we have been addressing these issues through the work of CRISPAZ, making sure that we share with people what a war does. Essentially, the work of CRISPAZ is to communicate, excuse me, communicate with with people what a war does to a country and the importance of nonviolence and how we deal with their issues. As Salvadorans, we feel that uh, sharing the stories and talking about what a war does is something that might not be very healthy, relieving the trauma of a war. But we do this because we feel that it's our duty as human beings to share with anyone who is willing to listen what a war does to a country. And we want people to understand that we must deal with our problems in nonviolent ways. So CRISPAS has been hosting delegations that come to El Salvador to learn about the war, but also learn about the micro examples of hope that happened after the war. And one of the things that we truly find a lot of hope in is being able to share this message, which isn't a pretty message, but it's one that we hope people take back and understand the importance of nonviolence and how we deal with our, different issues that we have around us. So we host about 25 groups every year. Uh, the pandemic has changed that. We were able to host 14 groups this year. We actually had 4 groups when everything kind of started going crazy. Uh, we had a group that had to cancel their flight and then book a different flight. It was a mess, but we're able to get home safely. The rest of the delegations could not come for obvious reasons, and we've had to, like most people, go virtual. So we have 3 virtual delegations planned for the coming months.
Yeah, that's exciting. The idea of virtual delegations, obviously not the same experience, but still to build bridges, virtually seems like a unique opportunity during this time. And I think there's a real hunger that young people have, in particular, to be engaged in what's happening around the world and how the pandemic is impacting people. So that's exciting that you could do that. I know that CRISPAS also, before the pandemic, you had an exciting delegation model that you had created related to migration. You were actually doing kind of a multi-country, kind of cross-border delegation. Can you tell us about that real briefly?
Yeah, we actually did 4 delegations of that type that you're mentioning, and it was a delegation that visited El Salvador, then would travel to the United States and go to the Nogales region, cross the border into Mexico. And the idea was not only to look at the issue of migration in what's happening at the border, which I think it's very important, but we can't look at migration in vacuums. So for us, it was important to bring the origin of migration piece into this conversation. So people not only went and witnessed how people were living in shelters, they all they had a chance to go to court. Uh, they 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 were also present in families in El Salvador that had people who were undocumented in the United States, people who, in some cases, we had people staying in a house whose mother was talking about her son who was at that moment trying to get to the United States, and she had not heard from this kid for quite some time. So it became very real. It wasn't just kind of like reading this and reading the story of a person. It was really living with people who were living the issues of migration in a very direct way. So the idea was to come to El Salvador, meet with different organizations that work with migrants, human rights organizations as well, visit the communities that we have relationships with, which almost all have a deep connection to immigration going back through the times of the war. And, you know, to this day, people live there. So then they would travel to the United States and have an experience of what the border looks like in the issue of immigration. It was a 10-day, 11-day experience.
It sounds like an intense experience, but a really holistic experience in terms of looking at the breadth of migration from a lot of different perspectives, to understand
Yeah,
root causes.
people had very strong and raw emotions come up during these 10 days. It was really something incredible to witness.
Yeah, that's great. Francisco, we've got a lot of folks watching tonight that have kind of let us know that they're out there. So we want to kind of recognize some of the members of the Ignatian family from around the country. Dominic is joining us from St. Peter's University. Welcome, Dominic. Greetings to Mary Kay, who sends greetings from Columbia, Maryland. Justin says, hey, Francisco, good to see you, brother, from Baltimore.
Hey, Justin.
So, and Evan says Michigan.
Yeah.
From
Hey,
Michigan,
Evan.
I visited El Salvador in March 2019 with CRISPAZ. So, Evan, thanks for joining us. Karen is here with the Mariano Lay Missioners. Thanks, ISN and Francisco. Scott Wright, a good friend of the people of El Salvador, says hello. Karen says, from our watch party, Marianne Donahue Lynch. I was on the founding interfaith delegation to El Salvador for founding of CRISPAZ many years ago. God bless.
Awesome.
And John Paul is joining us from Los Angeles. A shout out for all the folks at LMU. Go Lions. Thanks, Chris and Francisco, for all you do for God's people. And Veronica says, greetings from Southeast Australia. Welcome, Veronica. I think you're our first guest for on Tap from Australia ever. So great to have you with us tonight. Now, Francisco, you talked a little bit about the UCA martyrs, of course, the 6 Jesuits and Elba and Selena Ramos, who were killed on November 16th, 1989. Growing up, you had come to know some of these Jesuits through your family. Can you tell us a little bit about the experience of knowing a couple of those men and kind of how your family story kind of intertwined with their story a bit?
Sure. Well, my father was a former officer of the Salvadoran Army, trained at the School of the Americas. Some of you who are on this with us have heard of this infamous school. So my father actually went to this school twice as a cadet and later as an officer. And my father was an officer or becoming an officer during very interesting or very difficult times here in El Salvador. During that time, he became friends with Yacuria specifically, and then later with Segundo Montes. And they had a really strong relationship that was built out of an aunt that had my cousins, her kids studying at Externado San Jose, which was the Jesuit high school. And she would invite them over for lunch on Sundays and Saturdays. And, my dad and my mom and us would also be there. And that's how, this relationship began, just very informally, just with, some conversations over lunch. But a relationship came out of that. And my father and Ignacio Yacuria and Segundo Montes would make time to meet with each other and talk about what was happening in Salvador. The Jesuits saw that my father was really interested and concerned with what was happening, and he would share with them what he was witnessing in the army. And they really became a space for my dad to really open up, and in return, his consciousness was really elevated to levels that he, obviously he was not prepared for or had no idea. Out of that, out of that experience, the Jesuits introduced him to Monsignor Romero. My dad was very fortunate to meet Monsignor Romero and to also establish a relationship. Very soon, when he was appointed Archbishop, as we know, Father Rutilio Grande was killed. My father was the director of the National Guard, and when he came a few weeks after he was appointed this charge, a few weeks after Father Rutilio Grande was assassinated, and my dad could still hear people talking about this operation that had taken place. He shared this with the Jesuits, and the Jesuits said, you should share this with Monsignor Romero. And that's how my father came to meet Monsignor Romero. And they came over, mostly Segundo Montes and Yacuria would come over to our house during, birthday celebrations. And we would have not only the Jesuits over our house, but, fellow officers over our house as well. Some of them who were involved later in 1989 in the assassination of the Jesuits. So we have some of these pictures in our family albums of these, you know, past unaware events that we're going to have, people who were in these events. So my parents would stay, you know, after many people had left, they would stay, and my mom would also stay there, and they would talk, but with mostly my dad. And they became very important in the presence of my family, specifically, you know, my immediate family. Um, they really challenged my dad, and my dad eventually was challenged to a point where he disobeyed in order to commit a massacre out of this relationship, this kind of being held accountable to a different degree because of what he was learning from these Jesuits, from Monsignor Romero, and the messages that they were sharing with people. So he was ordered to commit a massacre in late 1980. He refused to carry out this massacre. They tried to court-martial him, but eventually had to. He was able to get away with some technicalities, and he was okay. But this presence of the Jesuits in our family has been present not only in my father in these decisions, but also in my life, in my sister's life, and my mother's life. Martin Baró was a professor of my mother's when she was studying psychology. So there have been some connections, or many connections. Uh, but I felt proud, and I've said this before. I lived in Mexico right in 1989, and when we moved to Mexico, I had a sweatshirt from the UCA, and I would wear this with tremendous pride. Uh, Probably many Mexicans had no idea what the UCA was, but I did, and for me this was really something that I remember wearing with my chest, you know, just high. And this was before they were assassinated. So I held these individuals in high esteem before the events of November 1989. Obviously, their testimony and their life, their legacy is now in me in a way I can't explain, but they are a part of me without any doubt.
And what do you remember that day? I
I
guess in the
do.
morning, November 17th. Do you remember?
I do actually. It's you know, we have events in our lives where we can remember exactly where we were when we heard the news, and this is one of those days for me. And I'm not just saying this, you know, just to say it. There are three days in my life that I remember where I was when I heard the news. Uh, because of the war, I lived in the United States, and one of the things I remember was being in fifth grade when the Challenger blew up. So that day is something that's has stayed with me, and I remember that day very well. Second day is the Jesuits. The third is 9/11. I think that's a common one for many people. But the Jesuits, that day, I remember we were in Mexico, and I remember just standing on the door, standing behind my mother, who knew them, and I experienced this mostly through her feelings. Um, I just remember her looking at the screen. Uh, the news was showing footage of the bodies, you know, lying on the ground, and I just remember my mom recognizing some of the bodies and saying, That's Ignacio, that's Segundo Montes," and then just covering her mouth and saying, "I can't believe they did it. I can't believe they did it." And she just kept on repeating this over and over again, and I remember that very well. We were, like I said, in Mexico.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Francisco, we'd like to take a little break and share a little bit about our sponsors and some upcoming events, and it'll give you a chance to get a sip of that beer. And my guess, I visited San Salvador in August, and I it's usually hot there, and you're inside. So my guess is it might be warm in there.
Yeah.
So make whatever climate adjustments you need to make, and we'll come back to you in a second. First, we want to just say hello to some other folks who joined us. Vanessa, greetings from Fordham, Francisco, she says. So welcome to Vanessa. Jeannie is joining us from Sacramento, California. She's a parishioner at St. Ignatius of Loyola. Welcome, Jeannie. Karen says, another note from our watch party, Kathy Hannigan Batista is with the Maryknoll affiliates in Los Angeles. Welcome to Kathy. Meg, it says, always great to spend time with both ISN and CRISPAZ, and even better together. Thank you, Meg. That's totally true. Meg's an FJV. We're glad to have her with us tonight. And Kelly says hello from San Diego. Great to see both
Kelly.
of you. So thank you for your continuing to share your story. So thanks for being with us, Kelly. Great to see your name out there as well. Let me tell you about some upcoming ways that you can engage with the Ignatian Solidarity Network. First, we have a racial equity challenge going on. You can walk with the Jesuit and broader Catholic network as we learn, pray, and take action for racial equity by joining the 21-day Ignatian Racial Equity Challenge. You can do this by visiting igsol.net, that's igsol.net/21challenge to learn more and subscribe. You'll receive each morning, you'll receive an email with a new element of the challenge, all kinds of faith-based and resources, as well as some other sources to really get you thinking about the realities of racial injustice, racial inequity, the reality of white supremacy in our country, and how we can reflect on that and work to change our society. So I hope you'll sign up for that. Secondly, ISN is a national partner of When We All Vote, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization on a mission to change the culture around voting and ensure that our communities are ready and registered to vote in 2020. We're inviting all members of the Ignatian family nationwide and their surrounding community to become voting squad captains and get excited about our 2020 partnership with When We All Vote. This is actually part of a larger campaign that ISN has initiated called Voting is an Act of Love, which will actually be publicly released tomorrow. So make sure to follow us on Facebook or Twitter to learn more about that, or Instagram. Anyway, we invite you to register now for the upcoming Voting Squad Captain Training for resources, structure, and guidance to engage your community, friends, family, school, or church to register voters and vote in election 2020. The trainer will provide strategies for ways to help register voters virtually and make a meaningful impact. So we hope you'll register today. The link is there on the screen, or you can go to ignatiansolidarity.net. From October 19th to the 26th, you can be part of the first virtual Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice. Like many things in the world, the teach-in is going virtual this year. You can join the largest annual Catholic social justice gathering from a screen near you. Join us for incredible speakers like Father Brian Massagale, Olga Segura, Mauricio Lopez, Father Greg Boyle, and Sister Simone Campbell. And we just learned that Father James Martin will be joining us as well. His picture's not up there, but he's coming virtually. So we have lots of other exciting speakers as well. You can register at ignatiansolidarity.net/IFTJ. Also, applications are available for those interested in presenting during the teach-in. You can find details at the website as well. I also wanted to tell you about an event we have coming up in September. ISN will honor Sister Simone Campbell, Executive Director of Network, and Father John Bauman, the founder of PICO, the Pacific Institute for Community Organizing, now known as Faith in Action, for their significant commitment to leadership for social justice at ISN's annual Ignite, a celebration of justice. Due to COVID-19, the event will be held virtually. It'll be on September 23rd, 2020. You can learn more at ignatiansolidarity.net/ignite, and we would love to have you join us that night to celebrate Father Bauman and Sister Simone and our other honorees as well. Now, let me tell you about our sponsors this evening. First off, we have Maryknoll lay missioners who work intentionally with those at the margins for a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world. To learn more about their work, join their Meet a Missioner Monday live streams on their Facebook page every Monday at 11 a.m. So make sure to join this coming Monday. Secondly, we have the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. JVC is a full-time volunteer program that works for social justice while exploring spirituality and faith through a framework of Catholic Ignatian values for individuals between the ages of 21 and 35 years of age. And you can learn more about JVC at www.jesuitvolunteers.org. And finally, JVC Northwest, who's focused on the core values of community, simple living, social and ecological justice, and spirituality and reflection. JVC Northwest is a national direct AmeriCorps program serving in 24 locales across Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Washington. You got to be 21 or over to be eligible for JVC Northwest, but make sure to check out their website at jvcnorthwest.org. We also invite you to join us for our upcoming Solidarity on Taps, continuing every 2 weeks throughout the fall. We'll have some great speakers listed there. You can find out who they are. So make sure to go to ignatiansolidarity.net/solidarity on tap. Also, if you'd like the conversation this evening and want to share it or watch it again, this broadcast and all our previous broadcasts are available at ignatiansolidarity.net or on our YouTube and Facebook pages. So make sure to check those out, share them, etc. Also, if you enjoy Solidarity on Tap, please consider giving a gift to sustain the work of the Ignatian Solidarity Network. You can do that by easily going to ignatiansolidarity.net/donate. And I want to make sure I mention this. If you want to share a picture of yourself watching or having a virtual watch party with Solidarity on Tap, you can do that by posting on your Instagram account and tagging Ignatian Solidarity. And don't forget to use that hashtag ISNLive, okay? We want to feature you in our next Solidarity on Tap Instagram story. So make sure to do that. And speaking of posting and sharing things, we'd love to have you share where you're joining us from tonight. And also, if you have a question for Francisco, we'd love for you to post that as well. And on that note, why don't we get back to Francisco so we can talk a little bit more and have some questions from our audience out there tonight. Now, Francisco, you told us about your kind of family's history, your family's connection to the martyrs. You told us a little bit about CRISPAZ. How do those two mesh together? How did you get to where you are today, kind of in your role as executive director of CRISPAZ? Is there an interplay between those experiences growing up and what you're doing today, or how did it all come together?
Yeah, I tell people that I came to CRISPAZ, the work that I'm currently doing, through a Facebook message that I received from Alison Ramirez, who used to work at CRISPAZ. And she just simply said, "Are you interested in this job?" We had known each other previously, and she shared with me that I was interested. And 2 weeks later, I was putting my 2-week notice at the job I was at and started working at CRISPAZ. But in reality, and without really knowing it, I started preparing for the job that I currently have back in 1981, when I had to leave El Salvador because of the war with my family and became a refugee without really knowing it at the time. But as the years went by, understanding that a little bit more, I was also an immigrant in the United States when I was there. The time that we were there, we were undocumented, and that also uh, not allowed me to understand things were different while I was living there. Never felt as an outsider, never felt discrimination or anything like that, but I did live with the stigma of being undocumented. And so, having been a refugee, and in no ways do I want to make it sound as if we were in any danger or anything like that. We were very fortunate throughout the 13 years that we lived abroad. We had the support of family, friends, and many other people. But I did come to understand those two lives in a way that obviously I did not. I wasn't a part of before. I was a citizen in El Salvador, and then obviously because of the war, I had to leave. Became a refugee eventually. Later, undocumented citizen, and those two things have along with my mom's guidance and my dad's guidance, have installed in me and my sisters this hunger for justice and to be attuned to the injustices around us. So this is something that I have been a part of, or I have been engaged in, even with other jobs that I've had before. I've whenever I would see injustices and in previous jobs that I had, I would always speak up, regardless of what the cost of me speaking up would be. And I think this, without a doubt, has a lot to do with the origins of knowing the Jesuits, knowing Monsignor Romero, and seeing how that obviously would was enhanced by just my mother's guidance, like I said, who was also inspired, I would say, somewhat by the Jesuits, but my father eventually when we were with him as well. So all these different opportunities that life gave us have pointed me in the direction of understanding that I must do something now with these opportunities that I had. And not, a lot of people say, we have to pay back, but it's really more than that. It's really understanding that we were given some borrowed time. And we were very fortunate to live the life of a refugee and an undocumented citizen within certain privilege. And for me, just to say thank you doesn't sit right. I feel called to use that experience to be able to share. I'm able to speak English because of that experience. So to be able to share this in a way that needs no translation and allows the message to
Mhm.
be clear is something that I just feel I have to do.
Yeah. And Francisco, I think your work at CRISPAZ and CRISPAZ's mission, the idea of bridge building, as you noted, it's El Salvador has plenty of people to complete projects and do good work, right? The idea of what does bridge building mean to you? What does that concept in the context of solidarity mean to you? Mean to CRISPAZ?
Well, we live in a very globalized world, and there's no denying it. Just this is a great example. I'm sitting in San Salvador. You're in Cleveland. We just had someone from Australia, LA, and different parts of the U.S. And so we live in a very globalized world. And one of the things that Dean Brackley, just the great late Dean Brackley would say is that we need to globalize solidarity. And we do that through building bridges of solidarity. For me, it is extremely important to understand that as people of this world that we share, you know, we have to understand what our choices and what our decisions do for other people around us, especially when they are done in places that have more power politically or economically. So building these bridges for me is just creating a relationship that allows us to be more empathetic with each other and to understand I think the responsibilities that come with being citizens from specific regions of this world. One of the things that we try to uh, use this bridge of solidarity is to understand the importance of nonviolence in how we deal with our problems. One of the things that we tell a lot of the young people that come here is that their country, the U.S., has been at war every single year that they have been alive. I'm talking about 19, 20-year-old kids. Um, so for them to take these messages back home and to reflect on them in a way that allows them to understand that their actions have tremendous consequences, positive or negative, around the world. So these bridges allow these conversations, these sometimes very difficult but very important conversations, to take place. So we can be in solidarity with each other, and not just in a one-way street kind of a deal. It's understanding how even people from here can help people in the United States, Canada, Australia. So it's really allowing for a relationship to be built. Like you said, we don't need people to come and complete projects, but I do think we need a construction of relationships to happen, so we can understand the interconnectedness of our decisions around the world.
Yeah. That was beautiful. The construction of relationships. I love that imagery. Francisco, I was curious to know as you've been watching the news here in the U.S. around racism and the reality of police violence rooted in racism, and what is what is what does that look like through the lens of El Salvador? As you know, as you look at it from El Salvador, kind of from abroad, how does it? Um, are there similar realities in El Salvador? What does it look like from the perspective of Central America to see what's happening here in the U.S. around race?
Yeah, racism is different in El Salvador. I think that there is racism in a very much different level than that exists in the U.S. But we are, I think, in general, as Salvadorans, we are surprised by the levels of racism that still exist in the United States, given all the history, given all the information that's out there, all the time that has passed since the civil rights movement, or even going back further, the Civil War, and seeing how people defend the Confederate flag and how they find ways to justify what it means. I think we are surprised that this is still something that is being discussed in the U.S. in such a violent way. So I would say we are just surprised that it's taken this long, and to see that this is still to a certain degree unresolved. It really puts us in a position where we question. This is one of the greatest nations in the world, and for them to be carrying this still in 2020 is still it's mind blowing. It's really hard to wrap one's mind around where the U.S. is, given all its history. It feels as if the U.S. is still, trying to keep that promise that has been unfulfilled. That idea of the American dream for everyone and being treated with equality. It's a promise that's still unfulfilled, and I think that's the way we see it.
Sure. Yeah. 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 Thanks for that. We have some more folks. You're very popular. We have some other folks that wanted to say hi. So Susana from says Salud Francisco desde de
Hey,
Paul.
Susana.
So
Wow.
Miss Susana. Ned says Jim Murray says hi Francisco from Carroll High School in Dayton, Ohio. Looking forward to summer 2021 encounter with our students.
Yes.
Hopefully the world will
Yes.
reality will allow that, right?
That's correct.
Lupe says, Saludos, Francisco, from Lay Missioners in New York. Thanks for sharing your story. And Amy says, hello from St. Mary's Student Parish in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Thanks for sharing with us tonight, Francisco. Abrazos. So that's wonderful to see all those folks from different parts of the country and beyond joining us tonight. Thank you to each of them. Francisco, August 15th is Saint Oscar Romero's birthday. He would have been 103 in a week or so. How is Saint Oscar present in El Salvador today? Where is he present in El Salvador today?
For someone who does not live in El Salvador and has not lived the El Salvador reality, one can assume that the majority of Salvadorans love Monsignor Romero. Unfortunately, this is not the case. Monsignor Romero is one of the most hated Salvadorans, at the same time, one of the most loved Salvadorans. After all, it was Salvadorans who killed him. And I think it's very important to understand this and to carry this as we move into 2021, 2022, to understand that Monsignor Romero is not a saint that should be seen as someone whose job is done. I think he has to be a very uncomfortable saint, has to continue to us, and in the sense that he's there tapping us on the shoulder, telling us, "Hey, look this way. There's still a lot of work to be done here," and tapping us again and saying, "Look this way. There's still a lot of work to be done." Father Sobrino was quoted in I think it was an article before he was canonized, and he was saying how he was concerned that this might sterilize the image of Monsignor Romero. I don't know if that's the right word I want to use here. But people might see his image more as someone who's behind an altar now, and we just pray and we remove Monsignor Romero from the people. And I think this has, to a certain degree, happened. When you visit a lot of the places that honor him now, you have kind of like these velvet ropes that are cordoning certain areas that one could, in the past, walk up to. So it's kind of like we're putting someone in a shrine now. And I think this has become very challenging for Salvador, because people are not necessarily talking about Monsignor Romero in a way that does justice to him. A lot of people are just focusing on the fact that we now have a saint, but not the reasons why we have a saint. Just quick parentheses, we have always considered him a saint. What the Vatican did was catch up with what most Salvadorans already knew. But I think the concerning aspect here is that there's still a tremendous amount of people who view him as someone who got what he deserved because of his political participation. So there's still a lot of work, and that's probably the way that I could wrap this or give you an answer. As much as we celebrate his life, as much as we celebrate his legacy, there is a tremendous amount of work around his legacy and kind of just continuing his legacy, to celebrate his legacy. A lot of challenges still ahead. We celebrated when he was canonized, but I think the celebration is replaced by a lot of work that needs to continue to be done. I think that's really the best way we can celebrate him being canonized, by continuing to be as loud as he was, without using decibels, if you will, but just being as loud as he was. And we need to continue that in the years to come, for many years, I would say.
Amen to that. Yeah. Francisco, I had one last question for you. Was shared via social media, but someone said if they were interested in working with CRISPAZ on a virtual delegation, should they visit the website? What should they do?
They can email me. They can email me or Stan, who's our development director. They can email directly to francisco@crispaz.org or Stanley@crispaz.org. Both of those emails work, and we'll get back to them as soon as possible.
Great. We shared that via social media as well, so folks have it. So wonderful. Well, Francisco, it's been great to be with you tonight, to welcome guests from all over the country. Thanks to all our guests as well. And we're grateful for the continued work of CRISPAZ, even during this very challenging time where your capacity to welcome people, to build bridges directly with people in El Salvador is limited, but your ability to engage people virtually is still out there. So thank you so much for the work that CRISPAZ does, and for the work that you do, and for your colleagues, and continued blessings on that work. So, and thank you to everyone for joining us for Solidarity Untapped this evening. Hope you join us again soon. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.